Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Messy Middle podcast. I am here with the TLM coaches to recap our DC HYROX weekend, which was honestly so incredible, so fun. Now that I officially have earned my first HYROX patch and say I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, I'm part of the gang. I feel so rejuvenated and stoked coming off this weekend. I thought it was going to kind of just, make me really tired and fatigued, and I definitely crushed some Z's last night, but I feel just so stoked coming off this weekend, especially knowing that we're looking right at Atlanta in 4 weeks, New York in 8 weeks. It was just such a fun weekend with the team. We will have a full video recap coming here, not this upcoming week, the next week, for my videographer Luke, who follows around all weekend to share the whole story with you guys. So make sure, if you're not, head over to YouTube and hit subscribe. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, hit subscribe there so you don't miss out on that. But we're going to sit here today and recap our races and our weekend and answer some of the questions that you guys left for us over on Instagram and just kind of share, how awesome it was. The team crushed it. I am so proud of everyone, but it was also so amazing to meet clients and people who ran up and said hi to me there as well. And so I want to let you guys know that currently we are also running a spring sale for the Lyss method. So after listening to this podcast, if you're like, yes, I want to train with these guys, I want to do their first HYROX, I want to crush with the TLM team, you can use code 20SPRING. So 20 in spring is just one code. We'll put it in the show notes here below for saving $20 off your first month, your first run plan, or your first multi-month subscription. And I would say if you are looking to train for your first HYROX, your best deal with that 20 off, especially for your first 3 months, would be to do the 3-month or 12-week subscription. It brings down the average cost of TLM to like $74 a month, which is quite a steal. Or try us out risk-free. If you need any help figuring out your program, where to start, anything like that, send us an email to hello@thelystmethod.com, and Carly or I will help you kind of figure that out. So that's our shameless TLM plug. Other than that, let's dive in. We're going to go in order of our races here this weekend. Trevor raced first in his first open solo men's race. Then Carly and Dani that night crushed their open women's doubles. And then Sunday, I brought it home with my open women's solo race. So to start, Trevor, how do you feel about your race this weekend? How did it go? Anything that you wish you did differently, or you definitely will be adjusting in your training or for your next race? All the insight. For context, Trevor crushed it, guys. He hit 112. There's a big rock zone on this course. He absolutely smashed it, and was locked in and clocked in, as we said, all weekend. So we'll give the floor to Dr. Trevor Baston.
Yes. It went as well as I could have hoped. So it actually ended up being 113. So I think when y'all asked me, I had checked my watch, and I believe it got pressed during the burpees, and I lost a minute or so. So it was actually 113. But
112 in our hearts.
yeah, but regardless, super happy with how it went. So my goal on the runs was to be at around 440 to 430, and I think I averaged like a really low 430, like somewhere right around 430. So runs went super well, even a little bit better than I think I expected. Um, the events went well. I was so good at the burpees in my first couple races they were doubles races. So I should have known beforehand that I didn't train burpees a ton leading up to this one. I wish I would have kept up my burpee volume a little bit more. Sleds felt great. I think I had been overweighting our sleds here, which is probably a good training strategy. Um, in general, but I was really stressed about the sleds going into it because of how heavy they had felt here at Core Blend, but they felt really good. Um, yeah, no huge hiccups. Had a little bit of a quad cramp on the wall balls, so I didn't have my exact plan come to fruition on those. I wanted 3 sets, and I ended up having to go 4 with, I think, like a set of 4 in the middle as that 4th set. But other than losing a little bit of time there, I am really happy with how everything went, especially with the rock zone, as big
Yeah.
as it was.
Yeah. I was really relieved to watch Trevor go first because I feel like I learned a lot by watching Trevor on just how to race solo. And if you guys missed it over on Instagram, we had a huge surprise this weekend where Corey, his wife Morgan, and their adorable son Branch, who's 5, surprised us all, planned this all with their videographer, and showed up on race day. So Trevor didn't know that Corey was there until the middle of his race. And Luke, our videographer, tricked me into thinking we needed to get content downstairs, and Corey surprised me. So Corey's joining us here today because he got to witness the whole weekend live. And so I'm interested to see, Corey, your insights on Trevor's race and what you saw, and or your coach Corey insights on that
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah, I apologize to lying to everybody for so long about not showing up. Up to
We
and
hate you
including
for
like,
it, Corey.
yeah, texting Trevor the day that he was leaving is like, hey, Charlie has some clothes down here. I need you to grab them for me and take them up to DC. Because obviously I'm not going.
Great
Therefore, I
rate.
can grab them myself. To like really complete the lie. No, I thought Trevor did great. Leading up to it, Trevor talked about being nervous about the sled push and sled pull, and I was not at all concerned for him because I thought that he had prepped for it well enough. And I think that if you're really nervous about the sleds, overweighting them is smart because then you're less likely to get to a situation where you get to race day and it's heavier than you thought it would be. Like worst case scenario, you overweight them and then you get to race day and it exactly is that hard and you're like, cool, I prepped for this and I'm fine. Um, but I think in the future for Trevor, he could get away with doing regular weight sled pushes or even lighter just to kind of get in the habit of, hey, I can push this pretty fast. I can move this pretty quickly and not have it be the station that just wrecks me every time. Um, I think he almost respected the sled push more than he needed to. And I think that was partially in his head. Trevor's not a small guy, but he is lighter than like me and Noah and other people he works out with. And so
Core
I
blood
think,
small.
yeah, so I think going into it, his 170-pound frame, he's like, well, I'm so small. The sled push and sled pull are going to be so hard for me. Like, meanwhile, he deadlifts 450. Like, this strength is not an issue for him. And so I think that was he was nervous about the sled, so I don't mind him like giving it a lot of respect. But I think that for his next race, he should respect the sled less. He should flex on the sled a little bit more next time. Um, but then he hit his paces really well. He averaged a 441 on the runs, and then
Real
coming off
slowly,
the
I thought.
say what?
Is that including that last run?
Yes,
Gotcha.
but I mean I have to include it.
For context for everyone here, the last run, if you own like the HYROX summary thing, if you want to go, lurk on all of our data, the last run includes the rock zone, which was pretty big, I'm pretty sure. So it was slower for everyone.
Yeah,
So that's what we're referring to here. There's this analysis thing that you can do and look at after you finish your HYROX races to see how your paces for every event, runs in whole, run on average, and or your individual splits on each event for your time chip are, so you can kind of see where you are with things, and that can help you kind of analyze your data. But for context, all of our runs on that last one were longer because it accounted for that extra distance and time that was included in that. So those of you who aren't like, you're new to HYROX or you're not familiar with what the DC weekend was like, that's just the context you need to understand that. So everyone looks slower in the last run because that was part of it.
yeah. I don't know why Hyrox does it that way. I don't know if that's to make up for like the first lap distance being different than the rest. I really don't know why they do it that way, but they do.
Yeah.
So great runs, and including like after burpees, which I think is a place where your race can really go sideways because the burpees are so taxing, even though you pace it appropriately. Your run after the burpees was a 449, which I think is really solid. Like that's a really good run, period. And then you got into the row, you recovered on the row, and then got back to a 430 run, and then your run 7 was a 429. Like I was super pumped about it. I
Yeah.
think you could be more aggressive in the future knowing those things now. Like the sleds aren't as hard as you thought they would be. I think you can push those harder. And then knowing that like, hey, run 7, you still had a 429 in the bag. Cool. I think you can push everything harder next time. I thought
Yeah.
you did great. I was pumped.
I was super amped from the farmer's carry on row 7.
Yeah,
or a
dude,
run.
going unbroken on the farmer's carry like that was sick. I was pumped for that. And I really liked the layout because I was able to get so close and like talk to you so much at the farmer's carry. I was
Yes,
really
that was
enjoying that.
awesome.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah. So Trevor's training now for Atlanta mixed. Are you doing open or pro doubles with your buddy?
Open.
Okay, he's doing open doubles in Atlanta, and is that your last race of the year for HYROX, or do you have more?
I think I'm gonna sign up for Dallas again. If
Okay.
it's not sold out. I just sort of made that decision last night, this morning. So that'll be in November. Um, I don't know if that's enough time for me to really think about doing a pro solo. I'll probably do another open, but
How much time do you need?
yeah, who knows? I might do a pro solo in Dallas. We'll see.
We'll
It's
see.
April. That race is in November.
When is the Dallas race?
November.
What date do you know?
I I don't off the top of my head. I think it's like early to mid, but I could be wrong about that.
Okay. Well, I'm doing the math in my head of like, can I run my first marathon and do another HYROX in Dallas? You guys, in a 2 week time span, is that gonna happen? We'll see. Don't.
November 21st.
Oh man, that's the weekend after my first marathon. Send
Full
it.
send. Full send.
Full send. Just kidding. I think that Trevor, I think you're a really good athlete, and you get the same things that I do, where you get punished on the things that make you small, but you are very strong and a good runner. So I think that if you do open, that sub 110 goal is.
Oh man, I think she was gonna say something really nice about me.
Did I freeze?
I think that was divine intervention.
Oh, good.
Guys, why?
He was about to give you an out.
I don't. Yeah. My internet sucks.
I
so
still
sorry.
can't hear Trevor or see Trevor, by the way. So I'm just nodding and
Trevor
looking.
is a fake goat. Well, he's on my side, so all that matters is that Trevor is on
Yeah.
my side. That's so weird. I don't know.
Maybe-
it's because you left and came back, and
Huh?
I think it's
No,
because
I left and came back because I couldn't hear him. So I literally was like, I'm just gonna go along with what everybody's doing. Head nod,
Oh,
laugh.
okay. Well, guys, if you're listening to this, we are doing our best on figuring out this rogue podcasting thing from the scratch. So I think that's, pretty simple recap on Trevor. Essentially, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He nailed it, and he now gets to just have fun kind of going into Atlanta, knowing that he gets to do half as much work
Yeah.
on the stations at least, or 60-40, depending on how you guys are splitting it. So
Yeah, it'll probably be close to 60-40, but
yeah.
Is your partner? I'm gonna assume your partner doesn't listen to this. We can just talk openly.
yes,
Is your
we
partner
can.
fast enough to push you in that race?
He's he's fit enough to where it's not going to be like an easy race for me. I don't think he'll be fast enough to like push me, but it'll be a tough workout for me. So some background on him: he's in the military, so he runs a good bit. He's pretty big into CrossFit. So he has like an engine on him. He's a little bit of a heavier set guy. He's bigger than I am, and his life does not revolve around fitness like mine does. So, yeah.
Will you guys post a better time in doubles than you just did solo?
It'll probably be close.
Okay.
You might.
All right. That tells me what I need to know.
Yeah.
That's enough. All right, cool.
I know nothing.
Well,
Fully
on
endorse
that
you going
note,
pro in November.
on that note, let's pivot to our dynamic duo of the weekend, Carly and Dani, who did their first open women's race. They drew the long end of the stick and got to do doubles first, and I did singles first. So they got the better end of the deal of the weekend, I think, here. And they smashed it. I know if you go back and listen to our preview things have not been perfect for all four of us going into this weekend. But they hit their goal of sub 90. And I think I keep flipping here. Sorry, guys. And let's hear more from you guys, since I keep freezing apparently, like how you felt going into it, how it went, execution, you guys, like how you split the stations, and or like how that changed from how we predicted it prior to the race versus day of in the event, and or you're running, pacing, just all of the things. I think you guys, we kind of saw the questions that you guys submitted beforehand, so giving insight to like advice that you would maybe give for people about to do their doubles as well, and like things you kind of learn through that experience.
Well, first, I can't hear Trevor, so Carly, you have to respond with anything about what Trevor says about our race for us, and you can recap it. So, Trevor, say nice things, please. But I think overall it was a really good race. I was really much more anxious going into race day than I anticipated being. It was like as I was packing and getting on the plane and all that stuff, I was like, I'm cool, I'm fine, I'm collected. And then I got there and I was like, I want to be Lucy Davis and Alyssa Olenick and the most elite athlete I've ever seen.
Do not put me and Lucy Davis in the same category.
I wanted to be
but I
the
appreciate
most
it,
elite
Dani.
athlete you've ever seen. And turns out I am a above average athlete, a very well above average human being. So if that's what we aim for, that's what I am. But no, it was a really good. It was a really fun race. I felt really good the first about 5 stations, I would say, maybe all the way to the farmer's carry. I regularly train in the evenings due to working a full-time job and really loving sleep. And so somebody in the comments or in the questions had asked about timing our food due to like, you don't know your start time when you sign up for the race. So it's not like a typical half marathon or any other race like 8 a.m. You have to be ready to roll. We were like, hopefully we'll know in 2 or 3 days before. So nutrition strategy for me was kind of just eat how I normally eat for my training and increase the carbohydrates. Thank gosh I have Alyssa and Carly to be like, you must keep eating carbs, eat all the carbs. And I was like, but I don't want more carbs.
Trevor even went on the Alyssa carbo load. I'm a carbohydrate influencer.
Yes, you are.
I'm a carbohydrate influencer.
And so I think that was one thing that worked in my favor, is like that was a normal timing for me. I do try to I do this for all types of races that I do. So because let's say I normally train in the afternoons, if I know I'm running a half marathon or a race that's going to start at 7 a.m., I will purposely do runs that are at that time. So I do think that helps me be capable to be given any start time and be like, okay, like I can tell you what my body's going to feel like at 10 a.m. versus 1 p.m. versus 5 p.m. I'll stop talking, Carly, so you can talk more.
The only thing I'm going to add a comment on that is, one, Dani put so much pressure on herself before that race. You would think that her job depended on it. So I'm freezing again. I just want to make sure that it's clear that no one's job is dependent on their performance. And I hope you ended up having a very good time.
That's called anxiety, folks.
Yeah.
Yes, no.
Dani was acting like she was me. I was like, girlfriend, you just get to go have fun. You still have a job on
yes,
Monday.
yeah. When I race, I am a very fun individual typically, and I think the doubles if it was just me, if it was just my time and my output and my performance, chances are I would have had far less pressure on myself and would have been like dancing through each station. I also still had a great time after I started moving. I have what you call restum miserable face or restum boredom face. And I just wanted to help Carly and I succeed as best as possible, because Carly is an absolute unit of a human being and a superhuman. So I was like, we got to do this. We got to crush this.
While we were watching them, I could see Dani. We're like, is Dani having fun? And Carly's out there like sticking her tongue out, rock on signs, smiling. And we're like, is Dani, I hope, like, I was like nervous, but I'm glad to know that you just had your RBF on and you were actually.
I did some of these. It's more in the running. And then I was hoping I'd be like, let me dance while she's rowing and stuff, but we were like absolutely destroying the events, and like Carly and I are event gals. I am much more of an event gal than Carly is.
Yes, you should see Dani pull a sled. I can't wait to those videos. I swear to God,
Insane.
levitating.
Insane.
Honest to God, like no one, if you ever do doubles again, just do 100% of the sled pull. No, a monster. Absolute monster.
Well, to speak
The,
to what
the sled
Corey
moved differently.
said earlier, I have been pulling a 225 sled because I am too lazy to unload the sled to 170 if I have a workout that has a push-pull sled in it. I don't swap the sled push weight. So I also am been doing my sled pushes on, it's like a indoor track turf. So I do have a little bit more friction there as well. So when a sled is on a, turf, like a carpet, I guess you could say, if it slid, it moved like butter.
Levitating. Okay, Carly, you talk now. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, to follow her on the sled pull was like demoralizing because I would pull it and it was like literally centimeter by centimeter, and I was trying so hard.
I didn't think your sled pulls
they
looked
look
bad at all.
great.
Just Dani
This
just
is
like,
relative to Dani.
yeah.
He it was like moving at such a fast pace towards us. I was like, you should just do it. Like, I'll just tap out, just finish it. Like, just finish it.
Probably should have communicated that in the middle of that sled pull.
Yeah.
Well, there was a little bit of communication that also needed to be had there too as well.
Okay,
They did an extra
Trevor
sled pull.
No, I'm
Yeah,
totally
don't
kidding.
listen to Trevor coach you during a sled pull at all. I actually found it in a video, guys. In one of the videos, I have it. There's my husband. Hi, everyone. I have Trevor and I going. He goes down and back twice. And I go, we did that. And he goes down and back twice. And I was like, okay. And so we start like pulling the sled again. I'm like, oh no.
I honestly go ahead. Trevor.
We had just gotten over there. Like we were late to the sled pull, so I had no idea how much y'all had already done. All I thought y'all were asking is like how many, and so I was saying down and back twice. But yeah.
Honestly, Trevor, like I am not going to pin that on you because I totally think that I blacked out.
I think so too.
And then like was literally just like going with it. Like my brain was just like, you just keep pulling. And so I really I don't think I was paying as close attention. And because the sled pull took longer, like the sled push went so fast that it was really easy to mark like we've been down and back, and then leave. We did the sled push, I don't even remember, like a minute and 20 or I don't know, something like that. But the sled pull, that was like 3-ish minutes, maybe more. And so I think it was just a longer period of time of working. So like, I think we genuinely lost track of how many times we had done it. And we were breaking it up into halves.
Yeah.
So I think that also was part of it as well, versus like, if I do 2 full lengths, that's much easier than me doing 4 half lengths. So I think that was part of the confusion.
I think if when we do pro, I think I will do full length, and then we can have you do quarter.
And then you'll do half, and then I'll do half.
Yeah.
For context, Carly and Dani are doing pro in New York because there's no more open tickets. But based off how your guys' events went, I think there's no reason to think that you can't handle, because the only difference in pro is the weight. And you guys, you move the sleds well. I mean, if there's any kudos that we can have coming out of TLM programming this weekend, is that you will be strong going into the race. Like you will be absolutely strong enough to handle
any of the weight.
Yeah, any of the weight in the events. We can't promise miracle running progress in 12 weeks because that really is dictated by a baseline of fitness going into it. That's always my precautionary tale. I never want to overhype what you can do in 12 weeks of running. But if you, especially through build, perform long-term into the HYROX programming specifically, I was laughing watching you guys. I was like, well, we squat and hinge. That is for sure. We have strong legs in TLM. And I know that some of the questions coming from people on my Instagram were like how to make the sled pull easier. And I feel like our whole team smashed the sleds. I really think that we were all average or upper average in the times for our sleds. And I think making the sled pull easier is probably a product of just practicing that. I think it's a lot easier to lean into a sled and push than it was probably to pull. And I was very fortunate. Trevor went back and coached me even before my race. And I think he helped you guys too on how to do the technique that applies a little bit more for HYROX. But I also think it's just like having strong legs and probably like a good like upper back and upper body as well is going to be the thing that allows you to show up and do that. Like you can practice that all you want, but if you don't have the strength even going into practicing it, I think that's what people forget with some of that stuff is like having that general physical preparedness of strength. And I can see Trevor shaking his head, which means that I'm not totally wrong here, is the thing that's going to allow you to do that. Because I didn't even do specific sled practice much at all in my training until a few weeks before. And my sleds moved really well. And I think that the one thing we all have in common here is we are all strength athletes before we are endurance athletes, which has its cons in HYROX. You know what I mean? Like I know for you guys, your runs was the thing that hurt you more than your event times. But I think that like, you know, even for me and Trevor, you know, that was the thing that helped us pace evenly and not blow up, is that the strength relative to our total strength was also something that was like, you know, it wasn't crazy comparatively to someone who maybe has a lower strength baseline. And that's, you know, important to note there. And I know that you guys are listening to this because you want, like, you basically want to steal our tips and application for yourself with your training. So if you haven't yet, another few questions were like tips for first time racers, beginners, and we'll link this as well. Me and Corey did a great 2-part video series already on my YouTube on how to, you know, what HYROX is, but also then a tips and tricks for training for your first race and event. We have a ski one coming soon. We also, this week's video will be how to run faster. I think next time I'm with Corey, we can definitely sit down and make some stuff on like sled tips. We'll put that as a note, Corey, of our next series of videos for these kinds of things. But these are things that I think people overestimate from doing like conditioning, like HYROX specific conditioning versus just like the strength training needed before you go into training for a HYROX race or event and having that baseline into it. So I just want to make sure we're touching on your guys' questions. Do any of you guys, the coaches and or athletes here, have any other comments on that? Specifically to like the strength and the sled works, because I think that was something that a lot of people asked about.
Yeah, I don't have sleds at my gym. And so I had this like irrational fear that I would get behind that sled and it would not budge. But I will say that, you know, in this volume 2 program that we are piloting currently, Corey had a really great, I actually learned a ton in this program, but Corey set me up with box squats. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but it's simulating the joint angle of pushing a sled.
Specifically like the higher box squat. Like
Right.
one that's
Like
above
the
parallel.
almost like a little bit below like a 1/4. Like
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So I did those exclusively probably from October, and by right before I got the stomach bug, I did 295 for 2 reps and felt like solid. And for context, a year ago, my daughter was not in full-time school, and so I was lifting at home exclusively with dumbbells. So I think that goes to show like how solid our strength programs are, because I lift 3 times a week. I do 2 full body days and an upper body day, and I take a lot of pride in my lower body strength. So Trevor went into the warm-up area with us, and I was touching a sled for the first time in 10 years. And I felt like, again, not to brag, but I could have like ran with the sled. I mean, I was just like cruising
You did
down the
very
lane.
well.
And of course, when you get out there, it's harder because of the surface. But at no point during our sled push did I feel like I'm not strong enough to do this.
And prior to doing HYROX, because you guys started Corey's program in October, right? As I finished my 100 miler, you were in Perform, right?
Yes.
I was
Yeah,
in Bill.
you
I was either in Perform or Race. So like
Okay,
I was
yeah.
in Race for a bit through the summer, and then I switched into Perform, and then I went into HYROX programming.
Yeah. Just I'm always nailing that home. We guys got a great client post in the group today saying like, oh, I thought if I went down to build, I would lose all of my strength, but for form and even race are absolutely kicking my ass. I'm like, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You are welcome. We will build strong legs. I just want to give that context for people of like remembering like the baseline and timeline of things of building strength, and it helps to go into your training cycle strong. And that doesn't mean you can't do your HYROX race if you don't have that. But you just need to make sure that you include that strength training in your HYROX preparation. Like don't don't the events and training is a shiny thing, but being strong and running is really
Yeah.
going to be the thing that allows you to show up on
It
that
is
day.
a running race with strength components. And like you can see.
So is there any
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you guys if there's anything that you would have done differently splitting it up wise, now looking
I
back
would have
versus
done
the plan
more.
you
I
came
would
in
have
with?
done full lengths on the sled and full lengths on the poles, just so we didn't have to waste the time switching.
I think the biggest thing for us was not necessarily how we split up the work, and we did adjust as we went. Like we kind of were like, hey, I'm tired off of this run, or I need a little bit more recovery. I'll start first, or like, can you start first? We communicated really well on our runs. I will say, because we have so much strength going into the events, when we were doing the events, they felt so easy. And we originally were like, let's pull back in the events so we can go harder in the runs. And I did not stick to my strategy. I was like, felt so good in the events that I pushed them really hard. And it wasn't until after the events that that fatigue set in. And so then I'm going into the run and I'm like, okay, now I'm tired. And now I need to recover in this first lap. And I think that's where we lost, at least 30 seconds in our first lap. And so that would be what I would approach differently, because if we had less strength going into the events, we would need to push harder and probably come out even more fatigued. But because we are strong in the events, we could really afford to pull back there.
Yeah.
In my opinion,
Yes,
that's how I
agree
would.
100%. I think too is like we would try at our first lap. I think we would also the first few. I would say first 4 runs, we hit the run a little faster, so we weren't able to then speed up around the second lap, kind of thing. If that makes sense. Like we were like, oh, we got to hit this pace, and then we would actually be ahead of that pace, and then we would be like, oh, forks and knives, and we'd slowly need to like pull back a little bit. There's like this second trash can. I remember seeing it every time on the lap, because I have to spit like nobody's business. And every time I was like, that trash can is farther away than you keep thinking, Danielle. And it was one of those things, and Carly asked me mid-race, like, I feel like I'm holding you back on the run. And I said, no, because if I can hold this right now and it feels good. It felt comfortable. But if you ask me to keep that going for all 8 or go any faster, by the time I got to 6, 7, 8, I would not be able to progressively get faster. And I think one event I wish I pulled back more on, even though it felt really good, was the row. I actually held, like, my row pace was something I've held.
Dani ripped it.
Yeah.
You were like 145.
I was. And it felt really good. I probably was around 145, 155. And that's probably the best I've held in quite some time. I did spend a lot of time practicing the big pulls and taking some time to relax. And what was interesting was during the row, I didn't feel overly taxed. But the minute I stood up, Carly took off and I was like, ooh, my heart rate kind of spiked a little bit more than I anticipated it spiking. And because I was sitting down on the rower, I was like, well, my heart rate was fine then, so I don't know what it was. But I actively said to Carly, like, I need you to pull back, and we need to, like, walk out till we can run, because I just need 4 or 5 seconds to, like, and then go. So I wish I had actually pulled that road more to, like, a 2:02 speed, and then been able to hit the run harder. I was actually
Trevor,
really
I can
happy
see
with
you
the
itching.
burpees. Yeah.
Trevor, go ahead. I see you itching.
I know Dani
And
can't
Dani can't see
And
you,
I
so I'm
can't
gonna
hear
intervene.
him.
I know. So Trevor, you go. Trevor has something to say, Dani.
Well, I'm so glad he
think
can hear him. I can hear him.
I think that brings up a really important point for anybody who's not like an excellent runner. Just because you can push the events hard doesn't mean you should. So like if you struggle on the runs, you need to be able to recover a little bit on the events, especially if you're a really good eventer, like a Carly and Dani are. So I would kind of caution them on the open or pro that, like, just because you're in the middle of event, you're in the middle of an event and you feel like I can go faster, I can push harder, I can take more, doesn't mean that's a good idea if that takes 15, 20 seconds off your next run and then 5 seconds off the one after that. So you need to use your strengths more to recover than like use them to make up time, especially when you're a pretty like polar athlete like Carly and Dani are, where they're so much better at the events than they are on running.
Yeah, I think that's probably my biggest takeaway, other than the 5 p.m. start time and me being a morning person and like trying to figure out nutrition leading into it. I would say that is my biggest takeaway and part of that too is the energy at the events. Like we saw you a lot on the runs, but seeing you guys cheering for us at the events, you get that energy and you're like, yes, I'm crushing this. And so you just kind of give that extra push. And so I think that would be my biggest takeaway. I have, and I know I've mentioned this before, I've been primarily running just easy effort for a long time. So I have the speed, but I was talking with Alyssa about this. It's the discomfort of getting into those faster paces that I really need to kind of explore as we kind of prepare for Atlanta, is being okay with being uncomfortable. But I would say, to set myself up for success, my biggest takeaway would be to pull back on the events. So that's definitely a strategy that I'm going to try to hold myself to.
Yeah,
I can't
and
hear
for
what
sure,
Trevor
like
said,
there's a
but yes,
fine
I
line
agree
there.
with that. What Carly said, I agree with that as well.
Trevor's talking. Hang on, Trevor's talking. Hang on, I'm sorry, Dani. Trevor's talking.
Sorry.
I don't know what's going on. Go ahead, Trevor.
Sorry, last thing, just to cover my bases, I for sure like y'all are good enough at the events to where I wouldn't say you'll have to like go slow and like there's just a fine line, you don't want to. Yeah, I'll leave it there. There's a fine line. You don't want to say events, but you also don't want to get so caught up on I can crush this right now that the run suffers.
And I think that's good advice for everyone listening to this. Is like, I don't know, for me, I think we'll talk about my race here in a second, but like I lock in. And I know that's the joke right now that everyone's saying lock in, but like I think everyone kind of got to see that side of me that no one ever really has seen before. Besides Alex, my friend, was there in ultras and other races. Like I was focused on me as soon as that race time started, and so I was able to not let people cheering for me break me out of my plan, because I was not even like, I think there was only a few times when I like communicated with you guys, and it was mostly row and ski, because that was, I couldn't push it, and I was just more so communicating and listening to you guys there. But I think for me, not letting the influence of my friends, the camera, the peers, the cheering, the crowds on my stations was huge, versus like I think a lot of people do what you guys did, which is nothing wrong with that. Like your friends are there's a bunch of people, they're cheering you on, the events are sexy and flashy. And I think for a lot of people, HYROX is fun and they come from like a CrossFit background or a strength background, and the events are going to be their strong suit. And if it isn't, like it's still a running race. And I used to kind of take the approach of like, okay, well, maybe you should just run out slow for things to recover. But I think it's something like HYROX, like that recovery is costing you way more time than if you just took the event 10% easier. At least like my reflection of watching you guys versus Trevor, versus what I've learned from Corey and Noah recently, and then like just doing it myself. I think that like I really want to drill at home for people listening that are going to do this, because it is so easy to feel good. And if you're doing it for fun and you want to send it because it's some, then do it. That's fine. Like there's no one's stopping you. But I can see how it gets so flashy. I would say the events that are worth like letting that crowd feed you on would be farmers carries and wall balls, because at that point they're not really costing your run, or you're almost done.
Yeah, something that's specific to doubles too that helps with that. The doubles pacing is honestly a little bit tougher, because somebody's going to go into the run off a rest and somebody's going to go right off the event into the run. So I think accepting that, like, if you you finish the event, that if your pace is slower than your partner was just at on the event, like the row is a good example, just because your partner who did the middle portion is at a 1:55, that doesn't mean it's a good idea to keep that pace if you're going to finish and go into the run. So I think that's a really important thing to consider for doubles as well.
And for those of you who want more like info and learning on doubles, just make sure you're subscribed to my podcast or the YouTube platform, because me and Carly are doing doubles in Atlanta, and then me and Corey are doing doubles in New York, and we will unpack so much of that specific strategy of how we're going to approach that as well. So if you're itching for more of the doubles advice, just like stay tuned, because we will have more of that coming here soon. Dani, did you see any other questions from Instagram that we didn't touch on there, that or we won't touch on in my
Would you
little
say,
recap
I guess
that you
one
think?
of them is, would you suggest doing solos or doubles first? That was one of the questions. If it's your first HYROX.
Yeah.
I think it depends on
think
your
that-
fitness level.
Yeah, I do think it depends on your fitness level. I think if you're a strong runner who has a good bit of strength training, you could probably get away with doing solo first, since it is. But if you're someone who doesn't have if you don't have a really strong running history, or you think that the events might be too much for you to handle on your own, I would do doubles. I don't think it hurts to do doubles first. You're going to get the exposure. You're going to learn a lot. I sometimes wish I had done doubles before I did my solo. I know Trevor did doubles twice before his solo. And I know that we did have different experiences from you guys here, so I'm interested to hear more so, not me, the newbies comments, but maybe like Corey and Trevor. You guys have both done. Corey, have you even done a solo? Have you only done doubles? Corey hasn't even done a solo.
Looks awful.
Why am I the only one who just like went straight into solo on the entire team? I got the short end of the stick.
You
That's all right. I
chose.
learned a lot.
I think it's because that's who you are.
Well,
as
who
a
was I
person.
going to do doubles with? But also, yeah, that's true. I mean, I wanted to take on the challenge.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue, Corey and Trevor.
So I've only known people outside of you, Alyssa, that started with doubles. But for sure, as like a blanket recommendation to people, my blanket recommendation is doubles. If you are super driven and you can't find anybody to do solo with, and you just think like, I want to jump in head first as hard as I can, okay, cool. But I just think doubles gives you a really good idea of how to pace the events. It gives you a really good idea how to pace the runs. And you still do most of the event because you have to do all the runs by yourself. And so the thought of, hey, I want to get into HYROX, I'm going to do my first one, and it's going to be a little bit easier, and I will have a break during the events while my partner's going, and I have somebody to train with, and I have somebody to talk to, and I have somebody else that can count what lap we're on, and I have somebody else that can say, hey, just finished lunges, where do we go next? Just like having that as an intro, I think is so much more fun. And so if you are doing this, even if your plan long term is to be super competitive, I still think doubles is a great way to start it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I know one other internet friend I have who's done open, but she did open pro on her first one. I mean, she did a great time. She did like 1:15. She's super fit.
And Alex now.
Yeah, and Alex. My friend Alex this weekend, guys, she straight up got in 2 hours. She got in 2 hours before the event and just showed up and did it. So Alex is my friend from my 100-miler documentary. If you guys don't know who Alex is, she'll be in our vlog here this weekend. She just came along for fun with the crew this weekend. So yeah, I mean, I know I just did my first one as open, and I think that the reason that I was able to do that, though, is because I have enough of a training history with this style of training that it wasn't totally unfamiliar with me. I mean, I knew Trevor through our PhD, but we used to do CrossFit together at our CrossFit gym. So I had done CrossFit for like 3 years actively at our gym, but I had done like CrossFit-y type stuff for, before that. And I trained with Corey and Noah and Trevor and Jake and the rest of the coaches at Corbin Gym and did these workouts. We have one on YouTube called FYF or Fuck Your Friday. Like, I have done high volume concurrent training stuff enough in the past to kind of know, okay. And I didn't even really specifically train for the race, you could say. I didn't do a ton of HYROX specific stuff either, but I think that was like what made me feel okay with that choice. But I was still very nervous going into it. I don't think it's impossible. But I would say, like, making sure that you feel strong fitness-wise to be able to handle that kind of volume, if you do want to do it solo for your first time, would be what I would suggest. Like, making sure that, like, okay, I can handle, like, 90 minutes of hard running with, like, demanding strength work, and it's not beyond your capacity, right? Because I think a lot of people getting into HYROX, they might have a good strength training background, they might have a good running background, they might be lacking one or the other. I would make sure you at least have, like, enough of the performance that you want out of the both of those going into it if you're gonna do it solo, but you probably learn a lot more going into it doing double. Because I think for me, going in solo, that's what made me the most nervous, is just not knowing like how the event flows, like how like it worked, what the pacing strategy was, like how it felt doing the events. Like it was all new to me while I was doing it. And so that was the thing that I had wish I had known going into it. So to give you guys perspective of all of that, I don't think I regret going solo first, but I think everyone else on our team and everyone else I know, and a lot of elites even, have done or are doing doubles before they do solos anyway. So pick and choose your poison, I suppose.
One of the other is Trevor talking.
No, you're good, Dani.
Okay. One of the other questions was like, explain HYROX and the difference between that and CrossFit. It says CrossFit Open to me like I'm 5. And I think that's one of the questions that I get a lot, like as I tell people I'm training for this. And I don't know if it's well known, but I did do CrossFit for quite some time until I started working in sports performance, and then I liked that better. So that's how I decided to start training. But I think that's the one thing that makes HYROX really accessible to a lot of different people, is that CrossFit is a much more specific, higher, I wouldn't say higher level, but more technical movement standards and things like that, with Olympic lifting and deadlifts and muscle ups and all that, where HYROX removes some of that barrier and gets everybody involved. And they are all still functional movements. And I think that's where people get confused, is you say functional fitness and everybody thinks CrossFit, but rather it is just movements that everyone can easily do, and that are a part of just general movement patterns.
Yeah. And the biggest thing is CrossFit is constantly varied fitness. So you never know what you're getting into. You don't know what the workout's going to be. It's always going to be something new. And the idea with CrossFit, for those listening, I have a CrossFit level 2 certification. So like I actually I'm not anti-CrossFit. I've learned a lot from the CrossFit methodology that we integrate into things that we do in TLM, honestly. And I know Trevor feels similarly with his background in training as well, but it's, you're not supposed to really know what you're doing, or you're not training for a specific event. You're training to be generally physically prepared for any workout that's thrown at you, and mixing modalities of strength, power, gymnastics, skill work, and or cardiovascular conditioning and training. The biggest thing with HYROX is it's, what you're doing. It's the same exact thing every single time. I'd say the biggest differences in training is that CrossFit is more of a blend of skill, strength, and cardio, in thirds, more or less, is kind of the idea behind the methodology, where HYROX is definitely more endurance. It is more of an endurance sport with strength breaks than it is a strength or even skill-based sport like CrossFit is. It's probably 50% endurance, 50% strength and skill, versus third, and third. So I think especially if people are coming from CrossFit, we see this a lot even with people coming to TLM that want to start running. Your CrossFit programming doesn't prepare you to run. You might run in a WOD here or there, or Metcon here or there, but you are not trained to get better at running. You're not trained in any sort of polarization with zones or baseline conditioning or aerobic base, which is a lot of CrossFitters lack. They can kind of redline in the middle of a workout on a run, and that's about all you can do. So the biggest thing, and Trevor's shaking his head, so this means I'm correct. The biggest thing is and when I did CrossFit, I always crushed in the running workouts because I actually trained as a runner outside of the gym with running, right? And that's the biggest thing, is if you are transferring from CrossFit, or I think the biggest mistake people make is, I'm really fit in my CrossFit workout, so I'll automatically be a good runner. And that's just not how it works. Trevor, go ahead and add, because I know you're itching here.
Yeah, I mean, I just so I have tons of friends from the CrossFit gym that me and Alyssa were at. I still incorporate a lot of more CrossFit style programming than I think a lot of HYROX programs do incorporate, but the amount of hubris from my CrossFit friends about their ability to run because of how good they are at CrossFit, I've got to bite my tongue every once in a while. It is your normal CrossFit programming is not going to, one, provide the endurance base, and two, provide the running skill, and the running, being comfortable being on your feet for that long. Just because, especially if you're taking CrossFit classes, it's just not conducive logistically to the time they have. They're going to do a strength piece and then a 10-15 minute WOD. And those 10-15 minute WODs are helpful, You do want to have those things in your program to feel what it's like to really redline like that, but they are not nearly as close to like what you'll need for or to be prepared for HYROX.
Yeah,
Well,
I
it's
agree.
almost
And if
the
you're
opposite.
listening, go ahead, Corey. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Well, I was saying it's almost the opposite. Like, my number one advice to you guys in a HYROX race would be like, hey, don't redline.
Yes.
The closest I would ever tell you to redline is like, hey, it's wall balls, redline.
Yeah.
Or,
Well, I
hey,
was
you are on your run after, farmer's carry, and I know you're going to break a little bit on the lunges. Hey, go redline a little bit. But like the skill of redlining in a workout and then just like surviving to the finish line. Like, there's that scene at the beginning of Pirates of the Caribbean where Jack Sparrow's boat is sinking and he times that boat sinking perfectly and then walks onto the dock. Every time I do a CrossFit workout, I think about that. I'm just like, this ship is going down, and I just hope I timed it right where I crash right into finishing the workout.
And you know what, Corey? This is not a critique on you, but I would say that's because you don't have an endurance background. And I think people
Yeah,
who have more of an endurance background or more of an aerobic base are better at pacing and sustaining a higher level of power output in CrossFit workouts anyway. Which this
100%.
I'm saying this not because of you be like Corey is a because Corey you're not. Like Corey can Corey's a fantastic but he athlete and he's super strong, but like he's never really done a ton of endurance traditionally. And I see this all the time, which is why I'm pointing this out. Not I'm just using you as an example because you'll take it on the chin. I
Yeah,
see
you're
this
fine.
all of the time with things, and that's like Jan is our friend who's going to be at Atlanta that was at the gym with me and Trevor, and I was texting them this weekend about this because Jan's the person who actually taught me how to row, so I was like texting, I was thinking you on the row the entire time, but I said I just treated it like a 120-minute chipper is exactly because you can't redline a chipper that's that long, right? Like you can't redline that versus like Fran or those or you know
Yeah.
what I mean, those short all out things. But that's a good example, Corey, of what not to do because I think the advice you gave me going into my race, which brings us back to HYROX for people listening, and everyone gives me this advice. I saw this advice all over the internet. All my friends who diet in HYROX is you do not win the race in the first 2 runs in the ski, right? And that's where people if you come from that CrossFit background, you might come out and be like, "Oh, I'm going to freaking send it." And then you're redlining because you can't get your heart rate back down or recover enough coming out of that, or you're just a lactate like death bomb because you're not actually like oxidative enough to recover in the rest of those stations. That's really nerdy. Me and Trevor can maybe unpack that on another episode at another time because you're going to be forced to slow down. Your body at some point is going to force you to slow down to catch up with that. And I think that's a great example of what can happen if you don't pace that or treat it like that 5-minute, 10-minute red line Metcon versus more sustained. Or again, I know aerobic base and zone 2 training and long, easy aerobic conditioning is so trendy. We actually had a ton of coaching talks about this weekend. And it's not like you need to train like a marathoner, but having that baseline will help you recover and sustain that so much more in that, right? And I know Trevor and me like talked a lot about this weekend. We both did lower volume, high intensity training going into this. So I don't want it to seem like, oh, you have to do everything zone 2. Because Carly, that was what, Carly did. And she needed to refine that more coming out of it, just like I did out of my 100-miler year. There's nuance to this, guys. This is why I'm adding these like little caveats around this. But the thing I was going to say before we came into Corey is like, if you love CrossFit and you want to try HYROX, but you want to keep training CrossFit, like I would suggest, honestly, like reaching out to us because we can give you one of our running programs to pair along your CrossFit classes. If you want to keep doing CrossFit, just do a running plan subscription that will allow you to do that in conjunction with your Metcons and the strength of your group fitness classes. And I would make sure, just depending on your gym's conditioning schedule, that there should be at least one really long Metcon per week. Our old gym was Saturday. Sometimes it would be like a midweek workout would be like 30 to 45 minutes long. I would make sure that you were doing that longer one, not just the shorter and strength stuff too, but reach out to us because we can get you running to do in conjunction with that. That will actually prepare you for the run stuff. Go ahead, Trevor.
I'm gonna hop
Seamless
off. Sorry
plug.
to cut you
The
off, Trevor. But bye, guys.
Danny has to work her job. Bye, Danny.
Bye, Dani. Seamless plug. The aerobic capacities on the Lyss method are also a great thing to add in if your gym does not do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a really good point. If you guys don't know, we even have a cardio only subscription. So if you just wanted cardio to supplement in, if not running, but cardio to supplement in what you're doing, that's our cheapest subscription. And Trevor programs a lot of that. We have Metcons, we have aerobic capacity, things that could help supplement this or in your off season. So that's a great point. And Trevor is our cardio guru. He puts all those in every week. And they're honestly really great HYROX, like conditioning pieces, honestly. Like they are perfect for exactly what we're talking about here.
Can I mention something in regards to kind of like a longer term lead up to a HYROX?
Yeah.
I think some of the questioning, especially that we get inside the Lyss method, is like, well, how soon can I start HYROX training? And I think it just kind of depends, number one, on your baseline. But we have a lot of members, we have HYROX programs that are 12 weeks long. And we have a lot of members who just don't know what to do leading up to that. And we've talked a lot here today just about having a really good foundation of strength going into that. And I think combining something like Perform or Lifestyle, even depending on your capacity to lift, as well as something like 5K intermediate or something that's getting you that short burst of speed. And then a lot of those programs are 3 days of running with an optional fourth day. Use that optional fourth day to do something like a Metcon from the library or an aerobic capacity or something like that so that you're having that dynamic training. I think doing that would set you up, now that I've been through a HYROX, I think that kind of approach to training would set you up so well to go into our HYROX programs and then have you really successful on race day. It's kind of like you're training towards that style of training, but not hardcore in HYROX specific workouts.
Yeah, and something, we had a bunch of clients racing this weekend and we told them this there, and this is for clients listening or people interested in training with us or whatever, is that if you've even done a HYROX and you know you're not doing them for a while, but you can kind of see your weaknesses of what you need to work on, like we can help you say, like, here was my stations, here's my running, what should I spend my off season doing? I'm assuming for most people it's running. And that's where we're saying, like, you don't need to be doing 3 to 5 days of HYROX specific training. In that off season, pull back and really hone in on that running if that's the thing that's holding you back. But if you're an amazing runner and you're not stronger, then maybe we're getting you in Perform or Build or doing more of that. That's where it kind of really depends on those things. So with that being said, since we're almost at an hour here, let's pivot and wrap in then to my race, because that's the last thing we're going to chat about here. And after we gave our coaching advice to everyone here on all those things, because I think that will help tie into that, what I just said there about helping people in reflecting on what you need to work on. Because I know, looking at my data versus everything else, me and Corey or me and Carly have already chatted so much about the things that we want to do or need to train or refine on going into our upcoming races as well. So I have my data pulled up here from the text I sent Corey and Noah this morning on everything. And I actually did better than I thought I did comparatively after looking at my breakdown of everything. HYROX might be where I break out of the mid pack finally, maybe not pro might be mid pack, but we'll see if I ever do a pro race. But like, I looked at that last night and I was like, oh, maybe I'm mid-pack in long endurance. But maybe this might be where I'm like slightly less mid-pack dad squad. So I actually felt I was really, 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 really proud of the fact this weekend that I think me and Corey texted right before the race with everyone. And I said, what do I need to do to run a 120? I didn't want to say that out loud as my like goal for everyone and everything. And even seeing Trevor race and him saying there's a little bit of a longer rock zone, I humbled myself and said, if I get a little over 120, like that's okay. Like not a huge deal. Like I'm okay with that. I also just didn't know what I had in my legs recovery wise versus the running paces I had been doing in training, because there was a ton of fatigue I had going into that last block of training. So for context here, for those of you who haven't been paying attention to my YouTube or the last podcast, essentially from my 100 miler into the last month, I didn't do a ton of HYROX specific workouts. I was doing mostly run training, strength training, and like one compromised running workout per week and one like non-running CrossFit cardio per week. But those were like both maybe 40 minutes and under. They weren't super long. They weren't super hard, because the biggest thing that me and Noah were having me work on was running faster. Like I needed to run faster. All I did was run easy last year. I didn't do really like big HYROX stimulation mimicking workouts until I got back from Kilimanjaro. Half of that is because I was traveling the world and that's my fault, but that was the biggest thing that I leaned on. And so it was great because I think that, you know, my running was exactly what I needed it to be on that day. And so Corey sent me like exactly what he think I needed to hit for the paces. And I think I ran faster than we thought I would. And I stationed slower than we thought I would. So that would be the biggest thing that I would say if following our conversation last week. Part of that was I didn't want to come out a hero, but I didn't know how much to underpace myself in the beginning. I think looking now at my running, I could have ran that first 1K a little bit faster and not have been wrecked on the ski. The ski just took me so long because I'm not good on ergs. Guys, I'm 5'1". I'm not going to try to make excuses of just saying I'm short, but there's only so much. I'm 5'1", 143 pounds. Like, there's only so much I'm getting meters in on that. It is what it is. So I think I could have taken that run faster, but like I hit our estimated pacing for that, like perfectly, almost exactly to a T of the plan of what we wanted to do. So I felt really good about that. And I would say, like Noah made this point this morning too, the stations that punished me were stations that were being short. My sleds were actually pretty strong. I think my burpees could be faster. I think I did them a little inefficiently trying to step into them. I stepped too wide. That was a whole thing. That was a poor game tank decision there. And I should have gone on broken on farmers carries. But other than that, and those aren't big critiques. Those are just little things that I think I can practice in training a little bit more. But other than that, my running pace and consistency, I think I'm so proud of looking at this. Like I nailed other than the first one where I took it slow as a kind of a warm up because that was the suggestion. And the last one, which was longer with the rock zone, my paces were super consistent, which I think shows that like I don't think I ever redlined. I don't think I ever blew myself up. That's why I think I could push myself a little bit more in the events. But other than that, I think I couldn't have done it better. But I think for me, the reason I was able to do that was one, we knew what my fitness was going into the event and we talked about it exclusively. But two, I just leaned into that ultra marathon mindset of like, this sucks, lean in. And every time I came out into a run, I wanted to recover on it. And I said, no, you need to just start running. I did probably take it a hair slower that first like third of that lap. And then as soon as I got to about that third halfway, I don't know how much you guys saw me running. I picked it up, but it drove me nuts that I didn't actually know what my running pace was. And I was running entirely based on feel. But that I think is such a testament of I use zones, heart rate, and paces in my training. And my watch's heart rate was super off. I wish I wore a chest strap now looking back. It just was drifting too high. Like it was like telling me at some points I was going up to 210, which I wasn't. It was just my wrist-based watch. It was super off. It's usually off compared to my Whoop unless I have my chest strap on. So I recognized that like first run in, I was like, fuck. This is not, because I was going to use heart rate as a gauge of my effort as like when to push and when to pull, because I'm usually pretty good about being aware of that. But it just wasn't there for me. So I had to use like RPE and perception of like my pace and effort and breathing the entire time to pace that. And I nailed it. So I feel really good about all of that going in, but more than my time of my secret sub 120 goal, I think I was more stoked about just like how spot on my pacing was versus kind of stuff I talked to Trevor about and then Corey's plan for me going into it. Could I have maybe shaved more time off? Maybe, I don't know. But I don't think for a first race, my plan could have gone better and I didn't blow up. I maybe was a little too conservative in areas, but I think that that's exactly what I should have done on that day. So that's kind of my personal feelings and recap on everything, but I'm welcoming Corey and Trevor on their views and feedback, and then we can chat about like how we're using our data to approach for our doubles races coming up.
Heck yeah, Trevor, you go first.
I'm going to hone in on the using feel and your respiratory rate and everything for the runs. I mean, I think that is a skill that is so important to have. I am more, so I'm not against heart rate. I've got a Garmin. I use my heart rate. Love to look at the data, but you should not have to rely on that to tell you how you feel and how you're doing. And I think it's awesome that like you hit those paces, even when your heart rate was going wrong. So I had a similar issue in my race. Something goes on my watch when I push a sled. I think it's because I get my forearms and it occludes my forearm, but my heart rate drops down to about 100. And then it stays like that for like 5 minutes after. So like if I was going off my heart rate after the sled, it was telling me to sprint the next run. So being able to like be in tune with yourself like that is such a great skill to have, and it's awesome that like you nailed it that much. And then one little thing before I pass it off to Corey, you were talking about your burpees. I do think you could have started with bigger jumps. you were you were really pacing those jumps at the beginning. I think it's because we had talked about how grueling the burpees were for so long. So you were really starting with like really small jumps, and I think the second you like realize that like, hey, this sucks, but this is something that I can keep moving on. You really got your jump length and sort of opened it up and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
I think burpees are a place I can 100% uh, do a little bit faster. They took me like 5 minutes to do them. I think I definitely can do them a little bit faster, but I think I was just so, I had it in my head that burpees were going to just absolutely destroy the rest of my
Yeah.
race, that I think I underpaced them because I was so, my game plan going in was to hit my runs. And I did that, but I think I could have pushed the events and still held those paces.
You did leave the burpees and then run a really good run. Like most people slow down coming off of the burpees, and
What's the
you didn't.
burpees are? It's run 4 or 5.
Run 5 is after the burpees, so a 452 for you,
Yeah, 452. That was
which
actually one of my
is
better runs too. So
almost identical to your 450 coming in and your
and
uh
450 going out.
450 coming out of the row, like
Yeah.
dead on. Um, yeah, I thought you did great. I was really happy with your runs. I was really happy with how you paced all the events, and I think that you did exactly what you wanted to do. I mean, in hindsight, yeah, we could have pushed a couple things a little bit harder, but we didn't know because you hadn't done an entire race before. And
Mm-mm.
so, yeah, maybe you could have lunged faster or run harder on some of these points, but then maybe your legs would have blown up and the wall balls would have taken you 7 minutes. You
Yeah.
know, so I just, there's no free lunch in the race. Like, if you run faster, the events are slower. If you do the events faster, the run will be slower. Like, there's a cost with everything. So I think it's just hard to say outside of like getting to the end and saying, like, man, I didn't quite empty the tank as hard as I could have. Or I could have emptied the tank sooner and been okay. That's why I was saying during the race. My only like advice to you during the race was like, hey, stay calm, stay calm. If you feel good coming off the farmer's carry, go for it. Like that's the point where I feel comfortable with you with your really high training base and your like knowledge of yourself and your race experience, which most people don't have, is hey, if you come off the farmer's carry feeling good, you have run, lunge, run, wall ball left, pull the pin and go for it.
And
Just
that's
like,
coming off of farmer's carry. I had what, run, lunge, run, wall ball.
yeah,
So it was then, and then after lunge, I knew I was right at like an hour. And then I was like, okay, if
yep,
I can get through lunges, like, okay, or if I can get to lunges with 15 minutes left, then I just have to. And it's funny because there's that one clip that Luke said, and it was Trevor being like, she just has to lean into the suck. It's like, I knew I could hit 120, but I had to just stay on effort and pace. And I had the delicate balance of, I also knew that I was really worried about wall balls. And Trevor gave me the advice of like slowing down a little bit into them. So I did slow down in the rock zone. I took a sip of water and I was like, if that sip of water is the thing that stops me. But I just knew with like my breathing issues with the wall balls and the regulation that I was like, I just need to take, I took a second to like collect myself going into them, which was Trevor's advice. And I think that that was good for me. I think that knowing that with the wall balls for me, I should have maybe pushed the run before the lunges, like 3 runs out a little bit harder. But I saw that on my watch and I was like, okay, you have 3 things left to do and you could do them each in 5 minutes or less. And like, I knew that in my head. I was like, you have 3 5-minute efforts left and you can hit your time. And I just kind of leaned in on that last run of like, you just have to go. And like lunges, I definitely think you guys said you saw me click and go faster at one point in time, and maybe I could have done those a little bit faster. Um, but I was trying to just like keep everything in 5 minute segments to finish on that goal.
well, I thought the lunges, so you did the lunges and you were smoking everybody around you. And so what I saw externally was, okay, she's crushing the lunges right now. She looks great. And you're beating everybody around you. And you also know that you need to pace it a little bit because you have one more run and then wall balls. And the wall balls were what we were most nervous about because of your height, because of your size, and because it's a super hard thing for you to practice at home. And so it looked to me like you were pacing that appropriately and beating everybody around you, which I haven't talked to you about this yet. If I'm you, I'm a little bit nervous about passing everybody on the lunges on a station that you should be taking moderately. And so you were passing everybody, and then Lauren Weeks came up behind you.
Who I didn't even know this at the time.
Yeah. Lauren Weeks had the world record and then broke it during that race. So Lauren comes up, I actually have it on like my camera because I was filming you. Lauren comes up on the lunge and just crushes it. And so she gets to you right in the second half of the lunge, and you picked it up 20% at that point. And I think it was just because you were like, oh, I can go faster. Here's somebody going faster than me. I can trust myself a little bit, because I think the pack that you were in was not as strong as you on the lunge, which I was really impressed by, just because like height is a really useful thing on the lunges too, because you just carry more ground every step you take. So I was pumped with that. I'm now really curious what pace you can run in our doubles race that we have coming up in May, because regardless of how I do, you can run faster when there's a break. Like if you get a break on every station, which surely I'll at least do half of every station with you. And we can talk about it more as we like get closer to ours and do like a preview of it. But surely you can run faster. And so, okay, cool. You were running a consistent 450. Does that mean you need to run a consistent 440, 430, 420? Like I don't know what you can run when there's a break built in.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I will say, looking at this race, I didn't blow my legs up on any station.
Yeah.
I blew my legs up way more in training runs. And that's why I thought I could hold 745-ish pace, because there was a few, when I would blow up my legs on training days, it would drift closer to like 805 minute per mile pace. But I also had recovery and that going into it. And so I didn't blow up at any point in time. So I wasn't fully compromised, but I also know that my speed workout versus my compromised running, I still think has pretty gapped. My speed work paces are, for 1K, is probably closer to 715 to 730 minute per miles, I want to say. I haven't really fully done a ton of 1K efforts in a while. But I want, like, my 500 meter paces are like 625 to 630. So I think that there's a lot for me to bridge that gap in and train that within the next few weeks for the running for us. So I think me and Corey talked about this today, that, guys, for context with Noah, is I'm going to try, once my legs are recovered this week, I'm going to do an all out 5K to get an idea of like what my actual kind of harder sustained efforts are. Cause I just don't know. I haven't run consecutive hard in a while, and I haven't run faster than a 745 in any of my compromised running workouts at all this year. So I just don't know. And we need to figure out that answer of like what I can hold versus what you can hold or push with me.
Yeah. So for context, Noah and I theorized, and I think Trevor's on the same page with us, that like for a doubles race, the fastest you could run is basically your 5K pace. So if you're a 25-minute 5K person, the fastest I would want you to do a doubles race is a 5-minute 1K. And that's assuming like you're good at the events, you're not redlining on the events. Like 5K PR is kind of the max speed. And so trying to figure out like, okay, if Alyssa runs a 22:30 5K, that's a 4:30 paced 1K. 4:30 should be our goal for New York. Like that should be what we try to run. And so then it's incumbent upon Alyssa to hammer the events hard, knowing that she gets that break, and for me to be able to do as much of the event as possible and still be able to run a 4:30. So what's the most event I can do and still run a 4:30? Because basically Alyssa is 5'1" and 140 pounds, and I am 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. And so just like leaning over on the ski erg, I'm going to go faster than her with like zero effort. So what's the most event I can do, because I'll have a faster pace, and then still run a 4:30? And I don't know what that is. But I went into this thinking, because you talked about like not being fast, not being ready for that, being a 100-mile monster, I was like, okay, cool. So her fast pace is going to be like a 5. And then when we race together, we can do a 450 or a 445, and that'll be all I have to do. And cool, I'll be fine. And now it's not that.
I regained my speed a lot faster than I thought I was going to after my 100 miler. For context, guys, I was faster back in 2019, 2020. Then I got finishing a PhD. I got injured. I trained for some ultras. It just wasn't the thing that I was training. But I had a huge aerobic base that I've been refined. So that I think having that big of a running base, then going into low volume, high intensity, my body just like, it was like it absorbed that fitness quickly, just by refining those faster paces. So I think that I undersold myself on how long it was going to take me to get back to getting faster, at least for HYROX kind of thing. But yeah, I think that's kind of where me and Corey are at. And then I'm racing with Carly in 4 weeks in Atlanta. And I think that our plan for this is there is a bigger disconnect between me and Carly's run paces, which isn't a knock on Carly. It's just the reality of where we're at. So I'm going to take probably like 60 to 70% of the stations. We know I can do more of them and try to run at Carly's fastest pace. Like that's going to be our goal with that. And I'm going to probably train through Atlanta a little bit more and just pull back on anything that's super fatiguing on my legs. Because my biggest goal right now in my training, and we talked about this weekend, our team, we're strong people. Strength isn't the thing that is lacking for any of us. So I know me, Carly, and Dani at dinner after the race talked about like really maybe just dropping our 1 lift day and focusing on like 2 lifts per week and just dialing up our running training volume or like conditioning volume in general to really hone that in, especially for them. I think that that's their bigger deficit. And for me, trying to like just get faster. I also know I'm going into marathon training later this year. Carly's going to 50 miler training. I'd like to get my volume up a tad more. So I think that that's kind of my plan into the next month is to just like maintain that lifting a tad. I mean, I'm still pushing it, but as always, I'm not underloading, sandbagging my RPEs, but I really, really want to spend the next 4 to 6 weeks up until like with New York as my priority, really pushing those paces and getting a better idea of what they should be. I think once I'm recovered this week and do that 5K, we'll have a better idea too of what I should be hitting in training and how that looks as well.
Do you have an estimate, Alyssa? How fast do you think you can run in New York? Just coming off of, I just did the race this weekend. We're going to use the 5K you do soon as a closer estimate, but just like as a guess.
I think I can hold 730s. I think it depends on the humidity and heat in New York.
Yeah.
But I think I can hold a 730 minute per mile.
Okay.
You're going to have Corey losing sleep.
I'm doing the math.
I don't know what that is because in some of my 1K stuff that I do or paces or efforts where I'm not compromised, I can do like a 720 to 730 effort while running. But
So
granted, that's not compromised. But I'm thinking about like bridging the gap right now over 8 weeks, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw something out there, and if I'm dead wrong, Luke can go in and edit this out of it. A 730 pace is a 440 kilometer. I think that you can run more than 10 seconds faster with a break in there.
Yeah. Yeah. If I can get a Buterol hit, I think we're golden.
Okay.
You guys will see in the video, I'm running with my elbows on my waist a lot because I have like sport-induced asthma, especially in arenas that are drier, and I couldn't like breathe. So I did pretty good for someone with untreated sports and allergy asthma doing that. So I definitely couldn't get as deep of breath. So I think with a hit of a Buterol, Corey, we can do 430s. Unless it's 95% humidity and raining.
I am going to go into New York assuming you're going to want to run 430s. Okay. That is what I'm going to.
That's a good point that 10 seconds per faster is really not actually that much fast. That's a good point.
With a break in there. And especially if I'm in a position to like start and end the event where you get an extra little breather. So I'm just going to try to hammer volume right from now until then in that 430 range where that is a speed that I'm comfortable handling.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just, I guess, keep following your program and see what happens. I'm going to self-adjust a little bit, I think, with my own training a tad because I'm adding in volume, but I'm going to just, I think right now, if I go back into where we were at in our programming, I was doing a bunch of 500s, which is faster than that, but I might start bridging that a little bit more for me just doing top end stuff to maybe including some more 1K stuff just to see where I'm holding and repeating that, maybe jumping ahead in the program. Because of course, so for context, we're following this 12-week program Corey wrote, but it's with the assumption that the end is a HYROX where we're doing 3 across it. So I might modify that a tad to get in some more 1K repeated efforts to really, because that's what I think allowed me to intuitively pace during this race too, is I knew what felt in control for me. I knew when I feel in control when I'm running versus when I don't feel in control when I'm running. And that was what I was able to decipher. And I ran a 720 1K in the middle of my one workout recently that felt very controlled, but it wasn't compromised at the, like it was in the beginning of it. So I think we can do it, Corey. We just have to run a freaking heck ton and my Achilles can't explode.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where you being such a competent runner will be really useful for us. Is I'm good at the events, and assuming I can run a 4:30 while tired, I can basically just follow you out of the event, and you can just settle into that 4:30 pace, which is a 7:15, and I'll just try to hold on to you.
Okay.
That sounds.
That still feels scary for me, but Trevor seems like he looks confident over there, so I trust Trevor.
I feel like 20 seconds faster, knowing there's a break on each end.
Yeah.
Seems doable.
I'm not confident.
Not confident. We'll see. We'll see what the great master Noah thinks, because Noah's the one who will tell me more, or you better work if that's your goal.
If you do a 22:30 5K this weekend, I feel good about it.
Yeah. Last time I did a 5K was in 2019, and that's what I probably ran. So, and that's when I was in CrossFit shape. So CrossFit shape plus running to asterisk.
Which for you is like great at a 20-minute workout, right? Like CrossFit shape would be appropriate for a 5K. Like with running involved. All right, cool.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, on that note, we're getting to an hour and 20 minutes, and I know Corey and Trevor have to go back and do their actual job. And so we will wrap that up. If you guys have any questions, if you're on YouTube, go ahead and leave a comment, or if you're coming from the podcast, go ahead and hop to YouTube and leave a comment. If there's anything that you want to see us cover, questions you have, anything like that, we do want to keep podcasting a little bit more this year as we go through these things, and or making some, I'm going to plan to make maybe some more HYROX specific filler videos once we get content from our videographer to talk through different things. So if there's any questions that you guys have, I know there's a few things that Dani had in the questions on like race day strategy, nutrition, and timing. I'm hoping to potentially make some content on that, since I have a lot of sports nutrition knowledge. And I, being me, nailed my pre-race nutrition because I just have raced so much that I know thyself very, very, very well with that. Trevor has an iron stomach, so I wouldn't listen to him. I've never seen anyone eat a freaking chicken burrito the night before a race and then run without vomiting. That's inspirational to me. It could never be me. So I know there's
ruined everybody's stomach but mine.
We all got ruined from Trevor's pre-race dinner. So I hope to make some stuff on that stuff for you guys. I know that that's stuff that would be really helpful. But otherwise, if you like this, go ahead and rate, review, subscribe, like wherever you're coming from. And we're happy to have feedback on things that you'd like to learn more about if we're hopping on the pod more. And otherwise, thanks for tuning in. We are so excited to get up the video. DC weekend was so freaking fun. And the fact that we get to literally do it again in 4 weeks. I get to see all these goons all over again. I am literally so excited. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you for this weekend. And a reminder to everyone listening, 20 spring for $20 off your first month run program or multi-month membership with the Lyss method. And if you have any questions about that, just reach out to us at hello@thelysmethod.com. And me and Carly will personally respond and help you out and figure out where to start. But otherwise, I'll catch you guys on the next one.
That was fun. Thank you all.